We did not see this coming. The Knicks lose their first game of the season against the Miami Heat in South Beach by a score of 115 to 107. The Knicks went on a three-point shooting barrage in the wrong direction. They went 15 for 54 from three-point range and just didn't have enough to take out the Miami Heat last night. I thought that the Knicks came into the game with a lot of momentum, winning their first two games of the season. I was optimistic about last night's game. I thought actually in the first quarter, Jalen Brunson had a nice pep in his step, nice bounce to his moves. Even though the Knicks were missing some good looks, I felt like their offense was generating good looks. And we went into the second quarter, and I want to highlight a point of the game in the second quarter where I felt like things started to become too lackadaisical in their process. It was about 11 minutes left in the second quarter, and the Knicks went on this three-point shooting competition with the Heat. It was OG Anunoby taking a contested three, and then Jovic missed a three, and then OG airballed a three, and Kolek shot a three, and Cat shot a three. Everyone was shooting a three. There was no scoring in the game. Jaime Jaquez finishes the sequence with a layup. Mike Brown calls timeout. They come out of timeout. Kolek shooting a three. Everyone shooting. Nothing was discussed. It felt like nothing was, hey, I understand these are good looks, but they're not falling. There's two ways to go with that. Do you tell your team, hey, they're good looks, they're going to fall, just keep shooting them? Or do you look at the rhythm of the game and say, hey, like, we need to get to the basket? And that is going to be a big conundrum for Mike Brown and this team, because they are a good jump shooting team. Josh Hart spoke about it, ironically, in the post game. He said, you're going from shooting 34 threes a game last year. Tonight you shot 54. Is there anything, that causes you to think or pause in that execution of a game plan? And he thought about it for a second, and he was like, well, we're a good jump shooting team. And I agree. Like, Jalen Brunson's a good shooter from three. OG Anunoby's a good shooter from three. Karl Anthony Towns is one of the best big shooting big men of all time. Mikal Bridges is a good shooter from the corner. He's a good shooter from mid-range. Kolek's a good shooter. Clarkson's a good shooter. Yabusele, I know, like, my jokes aside about him being Jerome James, like, he's a good shooter from three too. That's why they signed him. So the question is going to be, how does this team pump the brakes on the analytics, and how do they manufacture some regular offense? And I felt like in the first quarter, I felt like they were running their offense, and then they fell in love with the three to the point where they didn't even run an offense to get those looks. Yes, some of them were good looks. Some of them were open off of rebounds, kickouts and things like that. But even Mike Brown alluded to, he likes to get the ball in the paint, touching the paint, and spraying the ball 20 times a game. He noted in the postgame that only happened 14 times last night. And it wasn't like the pace of the game didn't, allow the Knicks to get into the paint. And, this is a good test for them. And I said in last episode in the recap against the Celtics that the Knicks will face adversity. They will face better teams. And is Miami a more talented team, full strength, than the Cavaliers? No. But they are a franchise. They are a program that understands how to scheme versus a team. And Eric Spoelstra is not throwing any of these games away. And I felt like last night is the type of game that the Knicks could lose in the playoffs, where they're just stuck on a game plan, shooting the three. You've seen it with some of the best teams in the league dropping a game in the playoffs where they just shoot themselves out of a game. And I felt like the Knicks, they didn't help themselves on the defensive end. They gave up a lot of transition points, but that's a psychological thing that I don't know how you're going to coach any team to do when you're missing shot after shot after shot. How you're going to coach your team to make the smallest part of your operation the most important part. So these are guys, these are human beings. They like to see the ball go in the basket when they're not, when they're shooting at the level that they were last night. And I am the last person to say, hey, we lost the game because we didn't shoot well. And I'm never going to use that as an excuse, but that played a big reason in last night's game. A lot of people on Twitter are talking about Jalen Brunson being held out of the game at the end of the third quarter. It also coincided with Karl Anthony Towns picking up 4 fouls, I believe, and Mike Brown had a lengthy conversation with him. To me, the Knicks aren't going to be a team that's going to succeed well without Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns out of the game. Though I will say both of their comebacks against the Boston Celtics were spurred on by the Mikal Bridges and the bench players unit. And I think, this has been one of my biggest criticisms of Mikal. It's like, everybody's like, Mikal's just adjusting. He went from being a first option player in Brooklyn, and he's, now he's a third, option, and he's trying to pick his spots. I don't see the light go on with him enough when he is the only primary scorer in the game. I need him more than anybody on this team almost. When Brunson's carrying the load, it's not really Karl Anthony Towns is a space big shooting three. He's not going to go in the post and get you a bucket. That's not, if you're waiting for that to happen, you're going to be real upset with Karl Anthony Towns. His best performance is being behind the 3-point line. You're either going to have to accept it or not. But, yes, he can score underneath the basket here and there, but that is not the featured part of his weaponry, right? Mikal Bridges is a guy that can get into the paint and can pull up at the mid-range. I didn't see that enough last night. He was cooking from three. He did hit his threes here and there. I just felt like we needed somebody to initiate action into the paint and score. Jordan Clarkson tried to do it. He was kind of like holding down, R2, just like trying his best to get into the lane. But it just, he had a nice and one off of a miss. I thought Kolek struggled a little bit in terms of finding his rhythm. Yeah, and just going back to the Brunson thing. Brunson, I got reports that Brunson was hurt a little bit at the end of the third, and that's why he didn't come back until 2-3 minutes went off the clock in the fourth. And a lot of Knicks fans are upset because it was a 5-point game and a balloon to 18. Let me tell you where this game really changed for me, in addition to that little second quarter 3-point shooting competition. It was 76-74. Mikal Bridges gets a flagrant foul called when he shot a three, and he goes to the line for 3 shots. The Knicks have potential to take the lead 77-76 and get the ball. And I thought like the Knicks were playing with their food a large part of the night. And I felt like, hey, here's an opportunity. I even said it on the broadcast. This is a game-changing opportunity. It actually went in the opposite direction. Mikal Bridges goes to the line and misses his second free throw. He hits his first and his third, and it's 76-76. In that next awarded possession that the Knicks got, Jalen Brunson took a contested three. And from that point on, I think the Heat ballooned the lead. They went on a 24-11 run. It was 187 after it was 76-76. At that point, the Knicks just fell behind way too much. They tried their best to, keep launching the threes, and eventually they did fall, and that's the game of analytics. You never know when the section of missed shots is going to come. It's like, the analytics treats it like the casino. You know what I mean? Yes, roulette's a 50-50 game, but you never know when it's going to be red, 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 red. You never know it's going to be black, 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 black. You don't know. Sometimes crazy runs happen, and that's going to be, the challenge for this team. When are they going to be able to shut off the analytics and play to the feel of the game? And I think last night's a good opportunity to show them on film. Hey, let's take this to the rim. Hey, we settled here. Hey, let's look at this shot. Is this the best look we can get? Did we run our offense? I don't think that the Knicks did in that second quarter. And I thought they got so caught up in the flow of the way the game was going. Nobody stopped the game and calmed it down and allowed them to play to their strengths. And so one of them is 3-point shooting, but it was just too haywire. And the Knicks took an L last night. And, for all the people who thought that this team was going to go 82-0, the party's over. They're 2-1. They have their next game against Milwaukee tomorrow night in Milwaukee, 8 p.m. Should be a good test again. Giannis went for 40 and 14 last night. I already told you on the last episode of Op Watch, their front court is tremendous. And that's another interesting part about this team is that, Mike Brown starts the game with a double big, and he starts the halves, I should say, with a double big with Huck Porty. But you never see him again. And I don't know if that's like a rim protection ethic. If he just wants to match, I know Khalil Ware didn't play all the minutes, and maybe he was just trying to match Khalil Ware, but he's not going to have that luxury against the Bucks, as far as I know. I'm pretty sure that they run a double big, and also Giannis is a hefty five as well, so you're going to have some length on the floor. But I'm not going to focus on Yabusele. I'm not going to focus on, the fringe parts of this roster. I think Mike Brown will figure that out. I think these guys need to relax their shoulders a little bit. These new Knicks, Yabusele and Clarkson, just, relax and not try to force anything too much. And I think they'll turn it around. But I also think that the Knicks have a lot of reinforcements. And, some of these shots that they were missing, like I said, they were wide open shots. I kind of go Shamit in transition three, Shamit in the corner, Cat missing his patent, collects his feet in his rhythm, shoots his straightaway threes. They just weren't falling. And I think they didn't adjust. And I think in the future, they are going to have to adjust, because that's no way to lose a game. You can't lose a game and say we didn't miss shots. We didn't make shots. I personally, as a fan, can't accept that. One game here and there, yes, but like that cannot be an element of how we lose. So, and again, Mike Brown alluded to certain things in terms of giving up 15 free throws in the third quarter. Like they can't lose like the way they lost last night. So it's a good early lesson in the season. Get it out of the way. This goes with experimenting with lineups. This goes with experimenting with rotations. You have to be able to stomach it here and there. All right. And I think we'll be all right in the long run. This is part of the process of installing a new philosophy. You got to see what works. You got to see what doesn't work. With that said, this is Your Knicks podcast. Make sure you check out my other videos on the channel, all the recaps of the games, especially check out my Mohamed Diawara piece, because I think with the way that we're playing this game, shooting the threes and not getting the right energy, the door is starting to open up for our second round pick, Mohamed Diawara. So that's my guy, Kumo D. Anyways, let's go Knicks. This is Your Knicks podcast. My name is Poppa Left, signing out.